Happy Sunday. We don't have any music just yet, but we will in a moment. But in the meantime, I unplugged it. Hold on. I'm going to read to you. This is quite the image, isn't it? That's the Palantir from Lord of the Rings from the movie. Okay, we're going to talk about that. Today's theme is why Islam? Why is Islam everywhere? Why is Islam in Europe? Why is it taking over the politics and the culture of the UK? Why is there a guy about to become the mayor of New York City called Mamdani? And we're going to start by reminding you that there's some content on Substack has names like Judaism and Catholicism. That's sort of an expose of why the Democratic Party has to be remade in the way that it was in the 20th century. It was the party of the minorities. But now, isn't this weird that now the change in the Democratic Party might come from, of all places, a Muslim, a very good-looking young man from New York. I believe I don't know a lot about him, okay? But I have enough to talk about it. I want to talk about it at a high level. Now, of course, this scares Americans, right? And that's what I want to. That's why I have this bizarre thing behind me, and I want to talk about, why is this happening? His wife, I think, is half Palestinian. He's the first American politician that I've heard to openly deny that a state should be religiously based, which is interesting from Islam, because in Islam there really isn't a separation of church and state. Not the way we Westerners think about it. So I have a big thesis while I'm waiting for my iPad to charge. My big thesis that you're going to hear once in a while in my content on Substack is really you're really like reading my notes. You're reading my mind. I'm trying to give you sort of the deep background if you want to go do a deeper dive on some of these things. I frequently mention books that I get things from, but the core thesis is that we live, much like this book says, that we live in the emergence of a post-Christian nation. This was my favorite professor at Yale, Harold Bloom, and I'm sort of riffing on his thing. I believe that we're in the emergence of a post-Western world. What? What do you mean? When you listen to Jeffrey Sachs and Larry Summers and Fareed Zakaria and watch I think we're talking about things that don't really work anymore, that don't really have any. I think there is demographics. I do think we're going to see in New York City that this guy's probably work anymore, that don't really have any. I think there is demographics. I do think we're going to see in New York City that this guy's probably going to win. And how did this happen? Especially in the context of the war on terror, in 9/11, there was we were terrified that there were Muslims everywhere. They're going to blow us up. And now there's going to be a Muslim mayor of New York City. So I think this will be thought-provoking. I don't want to do the Nick Fuentes thing. I don't want to do, I don't find that intellectual. But we're from places like the BRICS and Russia and Alexander Dugin, they call this the multipolar world. And on my content, you've heard me refer to Putin many times as, you can hear him all the time. He's almost once a week, he does some public thing. And he always says our partners in the West, our partners here, our partners there. In other words, a multipolar world. In this country, we are trying to hang on to some sort of centralized system. And that's why I have this weird eyeball looking. This is the Palantir, by the way. This is from the movie. Okay, so we're going to hit on all this stuff because this is how we roll here. Technology and metaphysics. Now, I was talking to our new partner who just happens to be a very committed Muslim, and we were just talking about technology and so forth, and I brought up this book, which I promised to review for you, and I have not done because I'm so busy doing other things. But this is by Harari. He's an Israeli philosopher. And this book is called, if you can't translate this, it's called Man God. Now, if you have any sort of Christian training, like, Sunday school, catechism or something, this should scare you. Okay? Someone wrote a book called Man God. Now, and if you're a Christian and you say Man God, in the Orthodox tradition, that means Christ. Sometimes he's referred to as the God Man. But I'm talking to my partner, and we're talking about technology, and I was like, yeah, this book, and I haven't finished it. This book, we were talking about data. We were talking about large language models, and he was explaining to me more articulate than I've been trying to say that we don't need ever bigger models, right? You don't become a better musician by knowing all the music, right? John and Paul, the Beatles, they had actually a very limited knowledge of music and somehow created the Beatles 300 songs in 8 years. 300 songs in 8 years. They couldn't read music, no musical training other than they played 1,200 things in Germany. Right? Before they came back to Britain, they played 1,200 sets in Germany. No musical training. So the large language model, all we need is more data. The final chapter in this book is called The Data Religion. Okay, that's why I'm sitting in front of this weird eyeball looking thing. This is the Palantir, people. This is a religion. The new religion of the West is technology. I just said that. That's a profound statement. You want to hear that again? The new religion of the West is technology. Here, I've never read this before. You're going to hear it for the first time. I'm just going to read until it gets boring. Dataism. This is the data religion. Harari. This is the World Economic Forum, New York Times bestsellers. This is to the corporate world, post-Western fake World Economic Forum. This is the smartest guy on the planet. Dataism declares that the universe consists of data flows, and the value of any phenomenon or entity is determined by its contribution to data processing. This may strike you as some eccentric fringe notion, but in fact it has already conquered most of the scientific establishment. Okay, that's false, but thanks. Dataism was born from the explosive confluence of two scientific tidal waves. In the 150 years since Charles Darwin published The Origin of Species, the life sciences have come to see organisms as biochemical algorithms. That's also not a true statement. Simultaneously, in the 8 decades, it's because we're dealing with religion here, people, we're not dealing with science. Simultaneously, in the 8 decades since Alan Turing formulated the idea of a Turing machine, a computer scientists have learned to engineer increasingly sophisticated electronic algorithms. Dataism puts the two together, pointing out exactly the same mathematical laws apply to both biochemical and electronic algorithms. Dataism thereby collapses the barrier between animals and machines and expects electronic algorithms to eventually decipher and outperform biochemical algorithms. This is a religion, folks. This is not science. This is not even fucking reality. Okay? Shakespeare didn't write 32 plays in 8 years because he had better data. Bach didn't write Bach music because he had better data. This is a flawed, false religion that the United States is leading the world in this false religion. So let's start there and let's all calm down a little bit. I could probably go on. I could probably just read that last chapter and you'd sit there and go, what? It's a religion, people. It's a religion. If you really wanted to be old school about it, if you wanted to go back to Sunday school and catechism, this is the religion of the snake. You got it? The religion of the beast. This is Satanism. Okay? You're right. Again, like the Beatles, like you sit there and go like, So we have lots of data right now, like in music, right? Why aren't we making best music ever? No, we get Taylor Swift. We're getting some of the worst music ever. The internet is being clogged up with what's called work slop. The internet is dying because the data is feeding on the data, and it's not making Beatles songs, it's not making Scorsese movies, it's not making Shakespeare, it's making slop. All right, so, okay, let's get back to Islam, dude. Like, where are we going with this? What the West has lost, this is pretty profound. My theory is the West is not the West anymore. It's certainly not Christian, right? Erica Kirk, like, wipes the tear of her eye with three, not one, not two, not three, but three Masonic rings on her finger. You gotta have fun with this, people. It's like so absurd what's going on. The Western world has lost the collective. What do you mean, the collective? There's no collective thinking primarily in America and also in the other little country on the end of the Mediterranean. There's a very upside down religion running that country. Okay? And that's why we're all Palestinians now. And in this country, last night they had a ball like the scene from The Shining while they're cutting the food stamps to over 10% of the population in the United States. There's no collective. What do you mean collective? There's no fucking collective anywhere in any American politics. Okay, what does that have to do with Islam? Islam is the religion of the collective. Ooh, that's a spicy meatball right there. So part of this I'm taking, if you would like to do deep dives and things, is from Oswald Spengler's Decline of the West, and he wrote volume 2. He was very famous at the time. It was like the first copy of Decline of the West was very, very popular around the world, primarily in Germany and in America. I think Alfred Knopf published it in America. It was very popular, and then he came out with volume 2. And the first, if I remember right, it's somewhere in my boxes here. The first chapter is called Problems with the Arabian Culture. And he's telling the story of like the origin and decline, sort of like a rise and fall kind of a thing of the Western world. This is right after World War I, right before World War II. And he relates the Western world to the Arabian world, or what we today would call the Middle East or the Muslim world. Okay? And on TikTok, there's a guy from the University of, I think it's Austin State. He's very popular on TikTok. I think his last name is Consagranda or something, Dr. Consagrada. And he talks all about the Muslim world, and he says like all of our math and science and algebra and numbers and everything came from the Islamic world. The whole Western world is built on the infrastructure that we took from the Middle East, to include finance. Double entry accounting almost certainly came from the Middle East, probably through the Templars, probably went into the European banking system, probably went to Switzerland, because the Templars were eventually persecuted by the French king, and that's where Friday the 13th comes from. There's another deep dive for you. But all these things like zero and most people commonly will talk about, let's just do a little crypto here for a second. We'll commonly talk about, like when we talk about crypto, like XRP is like the next like world currency. There are no currencies, people. Not the way you think of them. You think of currencies in common parlance. We talk about, I'm sending dollars to London. There's no sending dollars to London. There's just debits and credits. It's weird to think about. There's not like a thing of dollars that moves through the wires. No. I think that's why they named Ripple Ripple, is because it's just like a ripple, right? Like if there's a wave in the ocean, it's just a positive and a negative traveling through the water. Isn't this fun? Islam has the collective. Now, just on a Sunday, and the Steelers will be playing here in 40 minutes, so we got to get our shit together. Just think of this. Here's this young, handsome, super articulate guy, like Mamdani. I haven't done a lot of research on him. I've just seen casually things on TV, things on TikTok, and things on social media. This guy is like Bill Clinton, or I think he's as articulate as Bill Clinton, and maybe he's in JFK world of being able to stand on his feet and answer and be funny. And he was on like the Today Show or something, and like he's like, yeah, people frequently whenever they meet me are amazed that I don't blow them up or something. He jokes about being a terrorist. And then he says, some people think I'm going to make everybody eat halal, which is like kosher in Islam. Make all of New York City halal. By the way, my dad and I sell lambs to halal slaughterhouses. That's when people say, where do you sell your lambs? We say we sell them to the Muslims. And they go, what? Americans are so brainwashed. They think like every Muslim is like cooking like things in his basement to like blow up the George Washington Bridge or something. It's funny. It's actually not funny, but so there he's. Hold on. There he stands in this debate, right? The first debate, which I guess was the primary, they go, where would be the first place you visit, right? And they all have to do the thing, and they all go around and go, Israel, 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 Israel. And he goes, I'm staying in New York. What the fuck does anybody need to go to Israel for? So there's that. Then there's the next one where he stands there and goes, Mr. Cuomo, like talking about the collective, and I'm going to get into sexuality here in a minute because I think my iPad is finally charged. Yes, it is. He stands there and he says, Mr. Cuomo, you were accused of sexual harassment by 13 of your employees when he was governor, right? And then the best part, and he says, and you subpoenaed their gynecological records. Like, I can't even believe the guy goes out in public. Here's the question I have. What was Mr. Cuomo and his team of lawyers going to do with the gynecological records? I mean, I think what they're going to do is they're going to find out that they had STDs and prove that they're promiscuous and blah, blah, blah. Just completely trash these women who went against them, right? Just smear them like I won't even say it. I was going to make some foul comment, but I won't. Solicited their gynecological records, right? So we're all, like Americans, we watch these things overseas, like in the UK, and like there's an ugly thing that happened. There was like a woman trying to get away from her husband, and I guess there's two sets of police now in London. There's like the Sharia police, and there's the non-Sharia police, and depending on which part of London, which police force shows up. But we're going to get into that. Come on, let's all calm down. But anyways, this woman, the Sharia police showed up and like, you're not leaving your husband, and like walked her back into the house. And then we see things like women being beaten, and like to Westerners, we're just like, oh my God, like this is right because someone didn't wear the right headscarf or burqa or whatever. And to Westerners, this is just like the most appalling. We have a guy running for the mayor of New York City who subpoenaed gynecological records. Do you see what I'm getting at here? Like, it's almost as bad. These women weren't accused of anything. And he was going to, with all his money and all his lawyers, they were going to gang up on these women and just destroy their lives because I don't know what happened. He somehow harassed them, put them in the water closet or whatever, and wanted to play, hide the sausage or something. I don't know. but they didn't do anything wrong. And here the whole Democratic Party, the whole Democratic oligarchy establishment is behind Cuomo. You see what I'm getting at? Like how crazy this is? The party that's very concerned about sexuality and gender dysphoria and LGBTQ, blah, 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 blah. And here these 13 women have their gynecological records subpoenaed. Okay. So let's all hope that Mr. Mamdani wins. Then he stands up and he says, maybe the buses should be free. So like this Bruno thing is like mainly like a financial thing, okay? This week, Nvidia just went above 5 trillion in valuation. Palantir, which is openly to unalive people on a worldwide basis, is just getting one government defense contract after another, right? While the government's shut down, while they're cutting off the food, I don't know why I keep smiling, while they're cutting off the food stamps, right? Palantir, I think, is worth like $300 billion or $500 billion now, okay? Run by a guy who says we're going to use this technology to go to war with China, Russia, and Iran. Just using AI. Okay. Hold on. Microsoft, I think, is now 4 trillion. And Mamdani wants to have free buses. Like that can't be over $1 billion. Like it's maybe $100 million. Do you see what I'm getting at here? These people work in Manhattan, in the hotels, in the basements, in the laundry, in the back rooms of the restaurants and everything. They take a train for an hour and 40 minutes back to Queens and back to the Bronx. Okay, it's like a $20 round trip or something, or one-way trip, I think, on the subways, right? Or on the buses. He's asking for like this much money as he's running for New York City. Trump is having the Shining Gold Room ball last night. And we're wondering why Islam is taking over our cities. Because there's a collective. We've lost all ability in the Western world to think and act on the collective. We just want the woman from Guatemala to be able to take a bus to her job and not have it be $14 and be 10% of her pay or whatever it is, right? Oh, he's a Muslim Marxist. We have no collective. The Western world has no collective social consciousness. We have silly women who purport to be Christians with three Masonic rings on. So let's go there for a minute. We only have half an hour, so I want to, like, what is this big thing behind me? Okay. So I like all this imagery, right? I think that like where the world is right now is best explained. You can see it in popular culture. You can see it in...
Happy Halloween, kids. And remember...
There's J.D. Vance. What a creep. Why does... So there's a thing that came out. I got a couple things to talk about. Why does any... One. Amen. So there's a meme running around TikTok.
I think that it is absolutely insane and extremely hypocritical for a lot of us women to go around demanding that a man have all of it together.
Okay.
That he have...
That's not what I wanted. So the thing was published in Vogue magazine, why having a boyfriend is an embarrassment. Did you see this article? And it came out while I was preparing for this thing. I was like, I got to do something about like Islam and Mamdani and stuff. And then this article comes out in Vogue called Why It's an Embarrassment to Have a Boyfriend. Now, I read the article. It's not quite as potent as it sounds. It's more about having a boyfriend on social media. It's not really just whether or not to have a man in your life. But even still, it's like, again, when I say the collective, I don't just mean like a global or national collective or political collective. It's even like in sexuality, right? TikTok is just all full of men who are like done with women. I'm not buying you drinks. I'm done, right? Don't get married. She's going to take half your stuff. Did you hear? I think it's just this year in China, they passed a law. Again, this is going to sound atrocious to Westerners, where if a woman gets divorced from her husband, she's entitled to no assets. Zero. You know how the normal thing, if you don't understand the basic idea of, I know a little bit of estate planning because of my background. So there's this thing called marital assets. The assets that were put together while you were married. And even if your wife is just a stay-at-home mom and you're an orthopedic surgeon and you're worth $10 million, half of that is in the Western tradition. Doesn't always work out this way, but the mental idea of marital assets is that they get split up evenly. In China, they just passed a law that says she gets nothing. And I think I know why. Because they've watched what happens in America and that it just wrecks the economics for everybody. So they just went, they're Chinese, they're just like, done deal, there's no more problems. She doesn't get anything. It's a lot like the police in the UK telling the woman, no, you're going home to your husband. It's like, to us, to the Westerners, this is like inhuman, right? But, there's a but there. We don't have any household formation. In Germany, the birth rate per woman is like 1.1. They're dying. German people are dying. Italians are dying off. In 1975 or something like that, 1980, 50% of men were married and had a house by age 30 years old. Married and had a house. It's now 12. 12% of men have a house and a wife by age 30. In the United States of America, do you ever remember this? Thomas Jefferson, if we ever give the ability to print money, if we ever give the ability to create money to the banks, first through inflation, then through deflation, our children will wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. I use that all the time on Bruno content. Isn't that perfect? Whenever you think about the economics of America right now, you can just whip that out. You know, Thanksgiving, just go, Thomas Jefferson said, if we ever give the ability to create money to the banks first through inflation, then you can Google it, you can find it all over the place. The other part about that's interesting, it's not a direct quote, it's like a mishmash of other quotes that people put amalgamated together. We have, in popular culture, we have Vogue magazine just saying, men are sort of an embarrassment, right? Again, in Islam, that is not the case. In Islam, it's like in black culture, if boys and girls don't get along, like everything is upside down, right? And I'm not doing this like to pick a side, but in the Western tradition, you might say that the reason this is happening is because the Western tradition is so emphasizes things that are the independence of people. Even Christian salvation is an independent idea. It's an individualistic, I should have said, idea. Again, just to make this cartoonish, there's a guy who sits there and goes, maybe we could just get some money for the buses while you're getting the gynecological records of the women who you sexually harassed. Right, so let's do money now. So again, Islam to us is very heavy-handed. I think a man can divorce his wife under Muslim law, under Sharia law, just by saying publicly, like, I divorce you and you're gone. So again, sort of heavy-handed to us. But let's talk about money. What is the real reason, and I can do this as good as anybody here in the next 15 to 20 minutes. What is the real reason Mamdani is going to win? If he does win, there's going to be a couple reasons. There's going to be the buses, that's nothing to pay for the buses. There's going to be Gaza. Okay. It's very interesting. I'd tell you to look at the outcome of the voting because there's huge Jewish enclaves in places like Brooklyn, right? And I think the majority of those communities voted for Mamdani. There's massive, if you haven't seen it on TikTok, there are massive, what do you call them? Not riots, protests or demonstrations in Tel Aviv by the most Orthodox Jews in Israel. Huge, like water cannons and shit, like just like probably over 100,000. See why we're talking about religion on Sunday? Protesting the Israeli state because they're trying to force them into conscription to serve in the military. The real reason Mamdani is such a powerful force, he's young, he doesn't really have any clout, he doesn't have a lot of money, is because of riba. And my Muslim friends know where I'm going with this. Now, if you don't know what riba is, in the Western tradition we call this usury. If you don't know what riba is, instead of just saying usury, because you usually think of interest, I think the better way to think of riba, which is forbidden in it's haram. Am I saying that right? I think it's not halal, it's haram. It's forbidden. Like alcohol, right? Like pork. Riba is forbidden. The real problem Mamdani is addressing is the price of housing. Ah, Linda. You're getting the Linda finger now. Why is the price of housing so out of whack, especially on the coasts of America? If you come into the hinterland, it's not bad. If you come into Pittsburgh and Ohio and the Rust Belt, down into Indiana, and of course Texas is so massive, they just keep building. My son just moved there. You can get a nice place, you know, a modern, fresh-looking place for $2,500. In San Diego, $2,500 is going to put you in one room, right? Like a little studio. Okay, I'll answer my own question. The reason the price of housing is so crazy, like basically workers are paying half of their income for housing. I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to guess that it's about 50%. And I used to be a banker. When you get to about a third of your income going to housing, it's a problem. When you get to 40 and 50%, bad things happen, like the subprime mortgage crisis. You have people buying houses that either don't have any income or have no way to pay them, or they have several mortgages that add up to 30, 40, 50, 60% of their income, and it's just waiting to fall apart. The way that that's falling apart right now is in the car market, in the auto loan market. Very similar. It's coming out right now. So let's think this through. So we have this housing crisis. I talked about it earlier this week. You can go watch Margin Call or The Big Short and you can hear the story. You know, it's only about $800 billion of bad mortgages in a $14-15 trillion Let me do that again. Yeah, there's about $800 billion of bad mortgages based on about $500 billion of subprime, but sort of like bad, I don't know, you know, like diseased cattle or something. If you spread them all around, everything gets a disease. So the subprime is about 500 or 600 billion. It created just a little under $1 trillion of bad mortgages, which almost broke the financial system, according to Larry Summers and Ben Bernanke and all those people. But it was only like 3 or 4% of GDP. Okay, so what did they do? So they backstopped. I used to have it on my iPad. It was 30 pages of Excel spreadsheets of all the institutions that had to sign on to the Federal Reserve balance sheet. Just let that sink in. What? It's like 30 pages of Excel spreadsheets. It was thousands of institutions. It was every bank, every financial institution in the United States had to sign on to the Federal Reserve bailout, whether you wanted it or not. Because if they just had institutions sign up for it and some not, then it would point out which are the diseased cattle. Feeling me? It's $27 trillion. The full bailout of 2008 was $27 trillion to take care of $600 billion in subprime mortgages. If your brain is going like, what? Okay, that's the appropriate response. All the brilliant people, oh yeah, we had to do it. The earth would have shook. The oceans overflowed. The sun wouldn't have come up. Like the corn wouldn't have grown unless we gave all this money to people who don't make anything. Bankers don't make anything. Finance and real estate is like 22% of GDP in the United States. What are you getting at? It's riba. What do you mean riba? What the a quarter of the GDP of the United States is usury. It's people who don't make anything. I'm trying to be sympathetic to why Islamic theology says that riba is forbidden. Mamdani is standing up and saying, and I can give you the numbers, those apartment buildings that the people that are voting for him are living in are trading at the peak. We're trading at like a 2 and a 3 cap. What? If you don't know what that means, I'll explain very quickly. If you had $1 billion in Russia, let's say, and you just want to do something with the money, right? You can buy stocks, bonds, gold, this, that, the other thing, you build a yacht, whatever. One of the obvious things to do is just to buy real estate in New York City. Okay? Basically at any price. You don't really want a dividend. You don't want cash flow. So if you went to Queens and you bought a building, there was so much money going into real estate while the bailouts were happening, while the 0% interest rates were happening, while the 3% mortgages were happening. And the money's all stacking up in the most prestigious real estate in the world, is in Manhattan, right? It's probably Manhattan, San Francisco, London. There's really not many cities that have that kind of thought process where people will just buy it at any price, okay? So think this through. So all this infrastructure to keep the financial system from never having to write anything off. See, capitalism isn't like, we don't learn capitalism to say, oh, when they write $600 billion of bad mortgages, what you do is print $27 trillion. Okay? But that's what they did. Then they ran 0% interest rates. Then all the money is coming from overseas into the big cities, and this is causing the price of the buildings just to climb and climb and climb and climb and climb, and it has nothing to do with the people paying the rent. Hold on, this gets worse. So people are buying these things at let's say a 2 cap, which means I buy $1 billion worth of real estate in Queens, and with no mortgage, to keep the math simple, there's no leverage, no gearing, no leverage. My return before tax is 2%. What do you mean 2%? Well, when interest rates are 0, 2% makes sense. Okay, so here we are post-COVID. We come out for a couple months there, we had 8 and 9% inflation. The Fed has to raise short-term interest rates, I think, raise them to 5.5%, is that right? And I'm making 2% on my buildings in Brooklyn, and I can get 5.5% at the bank or in short-term treasuries. Now we have another problem. Now the real estate is so overpriced that I'm not making a return. So what do? I have to raise the rates on the people who live there to get some sort of reasonable return that gets back to 3 or 4 or 5%, which is what the banks and the U.S. Treasuries are paying. The Guatemalan woman going to the Waldorf Astoria to put the sheets on the bed, she didn't do anything to deserve any of this. This is riba. This is growth gone out of control. That's why I have this weird Palantir thing behind me. we're living in a post-Western world. This isn't capitalism, people. This is like a nuclear reaction that has gone off in the housing market in New York City. And there's a good-looking Muslim guy who comes out and goes, is somebody going to do something about the rent? Hold on, it gets worse. Then when people protest anything in New York City, Gaza, you have, I went to the Ivy League. Columbia is a very, very, very diverse population. Okay? What's his name from I can't remember. I was trying to think of the guy from Sternlick, Barry Sternlick. Picks up the phone, calls the SWAT team, and they go attack the kids at Columbia. That's New York City. Do you see why there's going to be a Muslim mayor? My real thesis to you is this. We're spending a lot of time in the Western world talking about things that don't exist anymore. Democracy, capitalism, free speech, the Constitution, the First Amendment. These things don't apply anymore. Will they come back? I would hope so. But as we speak right now, they don't apply. No, if you want the New York City SWAT team to show up and attack students, and do you remember the guy, Tom Cotton from Arkansas? He called these protests, what did he call them? Little Hamas. These are kids with 1,500 SATs. Okay, they're not Hamas. These are like Chinese. I mean, Ivy League is a very, very diverse place, right? It's like all these kids with like 1,500 SAT scores. And they're making it out that they're like encampments of like Hamas. I don't know why I'm smiling. But if we get Mamdani in New York City, we need to think about what this means. I look at this, and this is why I have this weird thing behind my head, that the Western world is now operating with two. Hear me out on this. This is pretty profound. This ain't Tucker Carlson, okay? We have two rival Oriental systems. What do you mean? Look at the thing behind my head. It's called Palantir. These people, these tech bros, they're not this isn't Western to have 8 tech bros run the country. They're like the Magi. It's like the Middle East. It's like some sort of like Pharisees that are gonna. Here. There's the book. I didn't know this till there's. The final chapter in this book is called The Data Religion. The data religion. America is so fucked up right now. Like, we don't know what we're about to figure out, whether a guy who subpoenas gynecological records of people that he sexually harassed is going to run the city, or a nice, young, good-looking Muslim guy married to a half-Palestinian girl. America's in big, big trouble. I don't know if you get the joke here. This isn't a political problem. This isn't left and right anymore. We're in a kind of religious meltdown. And my conclusion to all this, because we have 8 minutes until the Steelers come on, my conclusion of all this is Islam has a couple things going for it. It does not accept this Mickey Mouse war of the sexes. No. Even if it has to be heavy-handed, it's just not going to do that. If you look at the demographics, and I'm not converting anytime soon. Muslims have children. Westerners do not. And a big part of the problem is riba. A big part of the problem is our Western finance has spun completely out of control since 2008. And everybody knows it. Ray Dalio knows it. I mean, we have a stock market that's just making trillions of dollars of fake market cap. When I say fake, it's not really fake. It is what it is, right? If Nvidia is worth 5 trillion, it's worth 5 trillion. And if Tesla's worth $1 trillion, it's worth $1 trillion. You can't talk it down, but it's because of riba. It's because of this out of control growth. What we call growth is riba. What we call economic growth is compounding interest. Hold on, it's worse. It's really very, very few people understand this. Our Western capitalist system isn't capital like you think it is. Well, Tesla's worth $1 trillion because, it's this and it's AI and it's robots and it's Elon. There's only $60 billion invested in Tesla. What do you mean 60? The book value of Tesla is I think at this point it's like 100 billion. In other words, if you had to go build another Tesla, if we could just bulldoze Los Angeles and go build a big facility like BYD, like these massive things that they have in China with 250,000 people working on one project in one place. Let's go build that in Los Angeles. How much money would that take? Let's say we're Warren Buffett. We're either going to go build that, he could pick up the phone, call BYD and say, do you guys want to build a facility in Los Angeles? I'll get the money for it. BYD would be like, yeah, Warren, see you soon. We'll bring some cherry Coke. Right? Or he could buy Tesla for $1 trillion. He could either invest $100 billion or buy Tesla for $1 trillion. That doesn't make any sense. That's our system, folks. It's riba, and it's based on this concept of growth, which comes from not just inflation, like rising prices because the government prints money. That's not how it works either. You hear that all the time. Government doesn't print money, people. It doesn't print money. What do you mean it doesn't print? It's why the government's shut down right now. The government's not allowed to print money. Think about it. The debt, the growth of debt in the United States has spun so out of control that we just cut off the assistance, medical assistance, to little old ladies in the nursing home. That's Medicaid. The veterans that live under the bridges. That's Medicaid? Medicare. Medicaid, yeah, Medicaid. We cut 19% of the budget of Medicaid, not care, the little one, the cheap one. We just cut all the food stamps off, the SNAP benefits for the kids. Barry Sternlicht, who called the SWAT team to Colombia, doesn't have enough money, so we cut off the fucking money to the kids. And you wonder why there's a Muslim mayor coming. What? And they, hold on, and they had a gold, like a 20s themed ball last night at the White House. I think you're going to see Muslim mayors of all the major cities. It might be like in Chicago, it might be a black Muslim. That would make sense, right? That's where Malcolm X came from, and Farrakhan and all that, right? That's where the Nation of Islam is. And if they find if they find like a Malcolm X, he'll win. And it'll be everything about riba, growth, and debt. So really, we've got 4 minutes here till the Steelers kick off. If you understand how money works in the United States, in the West, all money is credit money. There's no such thing as the dollar. It's just an accounting system. And the last thing I'll tell you, that accounting system is about to be transferred into this new crypto blockchain thingy. And the good Sheikh Imran Hussein, I'll leave you with this. I don't know, 3-4 years ago, I heard him explain, we're moving, I'm just going to leave the Sheikh Imran Hussein, okay? In preparation for this, I listened to his thing on riba. He tells the history of Western finance going off the gold standard in 1971, all that. I've made content for 5 years on this. I won't even go through it again. But 3 or 4 years ago, I heard him lay that, I always go we're going from this system to this system. Well, here's how he explains it. We went off the gold standard of the British pound sterling, where everything was like literally backed by gold. Like you could go into London or New York or Washington, D.C., and you could just hand a banker a handful of dollar bills and they'd hand you gold coins. Okay? Then we went on sort of, okay, he describes that as the British Empire and the British pound. Then we went on to the American dollar, which was, you should always remember this, through the Depression, we went from $20 per ounce to $35 an ounce. FDR made owning bullion, gold bullion, illegal, and we changed it from 20 to $35 an ounce. He would literally set the price of gold at breakfast. With his cig and his cup of coffee and his wheelchair, he'd be like, let's make it $31.25 today. Seriously, this is how it worked. So we went on gold standard. Bretton Woods, Sheikh Imran Hussein tells this story as good as anybody on the internet. And that worked until 1971, and he calls it out correctly because of the Vietnam War. Because the cost of the Vietnam War was so massive. Sometimes I think there was a conspiracy to push us into the Vietnam War to get us off the gold standard. I can't prove that. That's just complete crazy conjecture on my part. So then we went on this kind of petrodollar thing. Okay? You know, all over the internet you're hearing all these people talk about the dollar, the oil trade is no longer strictly in the dollar, and that's correct. So the British pound, the US dollar, and Imran Hussein says we're going on to something else, the new crypto system, and he says it's based in Jerusalem. You can have fun with that if you want. It is such a powerful view of what's happening. Did you know that the new East Wing has a resemblance of the Solomon's Temple? This is why I have this weird Palantir thing. You should be looking at this and be like, what is he doing in front of this like eyeball thing? All right, so let's finish with that. So this is the Palantir. This is the Lord of the Rings movie thing, right? This is what they're building. They're building literally something that's like Dajjal, like this New World Order eye in the sky thing is exactly what Palantir is. That's exactly what they argued in the Technological Republic, Alex Karp. We're living in two rival Oriental systems. You won't hear this anywhere else. This is a really weird idea that it's my own thing. Okay? The West is not the West anymore. We're sitting around listening to Jeffrey Sachs, who I love Jeffrey Sachs, by the way. My point in saying Jeffrey Sachs is he's telling us that we're talking about things that don't matter anymore. We have two rival Oriental systems. One is Islam, and one is this new thing based in Jerusalem with Lockheed Martin building some East Wing thing that looks like, it's because of what's underground, but the thing that's now going to be beside the White House looks like Solomon's fucking temple. It's weird, people. And Erica Kirk cries and wipes her tears with not 1, 2, 3 Masonic rings on. We're in a kind of new Babylon thing here in America. It's all Masonic, it's all Jerusalem, Solomon's, it's all Middle Eastern, it's all Orientalism. So thumbs up to Mr. Mamdani for this reason. And I say this respectfully. Islam has what the West doesn't have anymore, and that's a sense of the collective. Have a nice weekend. Go Steelers.